Welcome to Windows on the World. This is a follow-up to all of our other videos and the work we've done with Jerry Marzinsky. Tonight we've got a very special guest and we're going to go into a particular case which is quite disturbing, but hopefully people are going to learn from this because we are going to go into the dark recesses of people's minds and what used to be known as demonic possession. And we've done many shows on this, and Jerry Marzinsky, I've done loads of videos with Jerry, and Jerry is a psychiatric practitioner of 35 years experience, now retired. And Jerry started seeing a pattern in the voices, which were basically taking over people, especially paranoid schizophrenics. Most people at some point do have intrusive thoughts, and that's where this all seems to start. And it depends how the person reacts to those thoughts, whether they've got the awareness to realize that the thoughts are not their own. This can then lead into the person being taken over and the voices gaining more and more control over the person. So we've done lots of stuff on this. I'm not going to go into any background detail. You can find an article at windowsontheworld.net called Demons Are Real, and it's got all our past shows with Jerry, jerrymarzinsky.com. All of the information about Jerry and Janine, our special guest tonight, is going to be under this video after it goes live. So, Jerry and Janine, welcome.
Hi.
Good to be back.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, sometimes I don't know when to start with this because it's such a massive subject, so I've kept it really simple. And I think maybe we could bring in Janine to start with and just tell us a little bit about what happened to your son, Donovan. You obviously have a very big story to tell, but tonight we're going to get into the turning points where this behavior and this intrusion can get out of control, because in your son's case, it went way out of control and really as far out of control as it could possibly get. So just introduce yourself, Janine, and give us a little bit of the background of Donovan's story.
So my name is Janine, and I am the mom of a schizophrenic. And in 2020, my son murdered his girlfriend in Colorado. And he not only murdered her, but he cut her up. And we still haven't found her body at this point. And my son was diagnosed at the age of 12 with schizophrenia. And over the course of those years, he was given a lot of medication. And none of the medication worked. And then as he got older, over the period of time that, as life, moved on, he stopped taking the medication, and it just, things, got worse. He was very violent. He had a lot of violence. He was very violent. So over the course of time, he got violent with me as a mom, and I had to put some boundary lines down. And then it was like 1999, 1998, 1999, 2000, somewhere around there. He got in a gunfight in Denver and killed 4 people, ended himself in the hospital in Pueblo, Colorado.
And he was hearing voices this entire time, right?
Yes, he sure was. And he was a heavy user of methamphetamines. And so, when this all took place in that time, he was put in the state hospital because he was deemed incompetent. He couldn't go to trial. And then when he became competent, he did go to prison, and he got sentenced for manslaughter. Then he got out. He fell through the system. And then when he got out of prison, he got put on the streets again, and with like 2 weeks worth of medication. And then, he went back to living a criminal life. And then he got involved with this girl that he ended up killing. He had been in a relationship with her for about 10 years or so.
So did you see his condition deteriorate after he got out of prison? Was he worse once he got out?
Yeah, he was just one challenge after the other. He got involved with a lot of drugs, and he stole cars.
Was he taking methamphetamine all this time? So when he got out of prison after the first incident, he was still taking methamphetamine.
Yeah, after the first time, he stayed clean for about 3 or 4 years. And he had a son with this girl. I have a grandson. And he did okay, but she got involved. Her mother was a meth user and got her back hooked on meth. And then of course, Donovan fell into that, and then they lost custody of their son, my grandson, and then it just progressively got worse. Their relationship was so toxic, and everybody, his therapist and everybody he was involved with, said, you two need to leave. You know, one day one of you are going to end up killing one of the other ones. I mean, it was that bad for many
the
years.
prisoners called meth the devil's drug. That's the common name they had for it.
Yeah, it's the worst thing I've ever dealt with in my life, watching that go on. He was impossible to talk to, and extremely violent. So when this murder happened, it was a train wreck. Not only just in Donovan's life and the family's life of his girlfriend. It was a train wreck for, the district attorney. It was a train wreck for the investigators. Everybody was affected by this. And the sad part about it is that it happened during COVID in 2020. Soon after it happened I got the phone call from Donovan on April 27th. His birthday was on the 24th, and he told me what he had done. He told me that he had stabbed his girlfriend 15 times, and he told me he had blacked out, and I knew he was telling the truth. And then
Janine, do you want to regress a little bit to the time he told you, I'm not who you think I am, or something to that effect, where he's warning you that he's not the person that you knew?
Yeah. When he was here in 2017, when I had seen him for the first time in 15 years, he told me to my face. He said, "Mom, I am not the person you think I am," because I always tried to build him up. He was very articulate. He had the gift of the English language. He could talk up or talk down to just about anybody. He has a real, and always has had a really good grasp on the English language.
And he was a pilot.
Yeah, and he was a pilot with Civil Air Patrol. He learned how to fly an airplane before he ever learned how to drive a car.
So what feeling did you get when he said, "I'm not who you think I am"? What was going on in your gut? What were you thinking? What were you feeling?
There was a part of me that believed him, and there was a part of me
that didn't want to.
Yeah.
Also, Janine, it might be useful for people out there to know that Donovan had voices early on, and then you were saying that he said those voices had gone.
Yes.
But what seems to have got hold after that was much worse. Now, we don't know whether it was always the same entity.
No.
I think that's something that's quite interesting. So when did the voices actually start? When were you aware of it? How old was he?
There was a period of time between the ages of basically 6 and 10 years old. Before he was 10, Donovan identified that I would say, "Donovan, who are you talking to?" Because he had the most fun just having these conversations with. He had 3 friends. He told me he had 3 friends, and he named them. And do I know, if, I mean, all kids have imagination, but this was different. Donovan was a very different kind of a kid. He was very quiet, but very smart. He didn't mind being alone. He found ways to entertain himself. There was some abuse that happened by a boyfriend that I had to him when he was 4, almost 5, that I didn't find out till he was about 12. It was very traumatic. And then when he came to visit me in 2017, I asked him. I don't know even why I asked him, but I knowing your son is a schizophrenic, you just ask questions as a mom. That's what you do. And I said, have you, whatever happened to your three friends? And I named them. And he said, oh, he said, I got rid of them a long time ago. There, and, but what was in him then was not the same, or I don't know if they transformed. I don't know. But what I can tell you is that when I did ask about them, he had let those three friends go. But what ensued over time, and especially with the violent acts of him, murdering his girlfriend and doing what he did, I cannot say. I just believe that the demon, the entity that had attached himself, was far worse than what his three friends were, or they got worse over time. That's a question that is always it's kind of a rhetorical question, because those of us that are moms or family members that have children that have schizophrenia, we know the voices are real. There's no,
they are real.
Yeah, the voices are very real. And what are they? I definitely, from what, and keep in mind, my son is 44, and so he'll be 45 this year. And so I need anyone out there listening, to fully understand, and those of you that are a parent or have a family member of schizophrenic, we know the voices are real.
And that's the exact opposite of what psychiatry is saying. Exactly. They're saying they're hallucinations. Yeah. The only thing you could do is take meds. We are the authority. You do what we say. And schizophrenics have been trying to tell them forever that the voices are real. And they've been saying, we're the doctor. You listen to us. The only thing you can do is take these meds. The voices are due to a chemical brain imbalance or genetic, all these physical causes that they've never, ever found any proof for. Matter of fact, they have disproved them one after the other. But psychiatry has to find something physical. Otherwise, they have no standing. And this is not physical disease.
I agree with you. And when Donovan, there was a period of time when Donovan took a lot of the medications that Zoloft, not yet. No, it was, I don't want to name names because I'm having a little bit of a brain fart right now, but I just want to tell you that some of these medicines that Donovan was taking, they made him into a zombie. He was, I mean, at the age of 15 and 16 years old, he was walking around like a zombie. He hated feeling the way that he did. And he would tell me, Mom, I don't like the way this medicine.
And that's common. That's common.
Awful. And then when he got put in jail over the course of his time, and he was in and out of jail, keep in mind, he was a career criminal. He'd been in and out of jail. We figured out, we did the math, it was like 27 years by the time he murdered Allie. He had been in and out of jail for 27 years of his life, and at the age of 44, which is more than half of his life. So you have to understand, he fed these demons, these entities that lived in, and they loved chaos. If he wanted to have gotten rid of them, he would have, but he lived on the streets. I wouldn't let him come home. He was violent, and he had a history of being violent, in and out of jail, and domestic violence and all of that throughout his whole life.
Now, do you want to read those poems to kind of give people a glance of what was going through his head? The poems he had written?
The poems go back to about 1998, don't they, Janine? They go back quite a long time. And while you're just getting that, I'll bring in a point which we brought up earlier, that the handwriting noticeably changes, gets more frantic in the later poems, and almost it's illegible. It's very, very scratchy all over the place and pointing forward. Very aggressively written, and it's very agitated. Whereas the beginning, the poems from 1998, they're quite calm. They're more considered, and the handwriting visibly deteriorates as well. Do you think that was as a result of the methamphetamine use, or was that something that was consistent?
I believe that it was a result of the entities that lived within him, that because of being in jail, and he was repressed, and he couldn't live out what these entities were wanting him to do. And most of all of these poems were written while he was incarcerated.
And keep in mind that they were written before he committed the murder, right? and
Yes.
they predicted.
Yeah,
If you listen to them, they predicted the murder.
Yeah.
They're prophetic, yes.
Yeah, so I would like to start with the poem that he wrote called "There Is a Monster."
And those are the voices he'd be talking about now.
Yeah, and he wrote this one. This one was written probably it's either 1998, 1999. Okay.
How many years before the murder? Before he killed his girlfriend?
So it would have been, he killed his girlfriend in 2020. So 20 years.
21 years, yeah.
Wow.
20 years. Okay, so this poem is called "There Is a Monster." And he wrote this while he was incarcerated and when he was in the state hospital. There is a monster that lives in my head. This monster is real. It's not under my bed. My monster tells me things to do. It tells me sometimes when the news is new. My monster is crying as it spent all the years drowning out my courage and disposing my fears. My monster is strong. That's what I like to think. My monster is coming when it's time to drink. My monster is ready. My monster is strong. What will I do when my monster is gone? My monster will never leave. That is his plan. It overwhelms me when I'm making a stand. There is a monster inside me. I thought I was strong. How could it be? My monster has a name too. He walks in the dark whispering Yazoo. My monster is watching me. He won't tell you my name. My monster is the shadows you cannot see. His heart is heavy. He plays for the game. My monster is awake. He wants to be monster. He's as blood from a lake. His bond is with me now, monster. He has nothing else to do. My monster's awake.
And that overwhelm part, that's fairly common when the voices start overwhelming the patient and start taking over. So what they want them to think is that, the voices' thoughts, that they come across as thoughts, but they don't have the same intent as the person's inner voice. So they start taking over, and I've had a number of patients tell me, they ask the voices, "Who are you? What are you?" And they would say, "We are you." Mm-hmm. So they want the person to believe that their internal dialogue is theirs. It belongs to the voices. So we're brought up thinking that our thoughts are our own. But if you sit back a second, you listen to the thoughts in your head, you have to ask yourself, well, who's listening to those thoughts? You can't be the one listening and be the thought too.
Oh, absolutely.
So what these things do is get in there and they tell these people, we are who you are. These thoughts are your thoughts. And that's what society believes. Every thought that comes into your head belongs to you. And that is not the truth at all. It's nowhere near the truth. And psychiatry and psychology don't ask, where do thoughts come from?
No, they don't.
I think it's all about awareness as well, isn't it? I mean, this developing of awareness, then it would help at the early stages so that people can recognize these thoughts jumping into their brains, because most people get these intrusive thoughts that are completely out of character. But the difference is that when people allow them, or these things come in and take hold, because I think it has to be done with consent. It seems to be that the person has to in some way consent, because the history of this, when we've been talking about it, Jerry, is fascinating, because the voices seem to, especially with some of the witnesses, like George was saying, that they would ask him to do certain things so that they knew that they were getting control.
Right.
And they have an access to every single memory and every experience you've ever had, so they can humiliate the person into degrading themselves, and the voices then become dominant.
Yes.
So
Yeah,
in other
so
words, the voices bully their way in, then demean the person, and then the person becomes completely incapacitated against the voices.
Yes.
See, the difference is in the intent. The normal person will not attack and demean themselves. You know, so these are something else. These are something that moves in from the outside. And you know, what's so deceiving about them is they sound just like the other thousands of voices that everybody hears a voice in their head. They sound just like that voice, but their intent is very much different. It's very destructive. It's very demeaning. It's very negative, you know, and people think that that's their voice. You know, the intent is very different, though.
You know
And if
what
they-
I just realized with this, Jerry, because I want to talk with you about this because this is so important. You guys just asked me a question. Were the three before him, how did that transpire? And just as I was reading this, even though I've read it and I've read it before to both of you, it says right here, he walks in the dark whispering Yazoo. His name is, my monster has a name too. He walks in the dark whispering Yazoo. This is one name. That's not the same name as the other three names.
Yeah,
So
and
yeah,
it
it transformed.
well, either that or they were different entities. You know, because kids, a lot of times they do hear voices when they're younger, but they're not destructive voices like these.
Yeah.
You know, if you said he was playing with them and he was having fun with them, they're not these ones.
No.
But
No.
it seems to indicate that he's open to psychic influence.
Yes. Absolutely. And then the use of meth influenced that.
That's a gateway to open the whole psyche up, though, isn't it?
Oh yeah,
that's
meth.
a way of jumping in. Like it's abuse, isn't it? The trauma and abuse, and especially methamphetamine. We've discussed that before, Jerry. That seems to be an absolute gateway.
That is, it is an absolute gateway. Janine, you want to show him that clip of what Donovan looked like?
Yeah. I think
I can put it on, Janine. Yeah.
Yeah, I've got that keyed up for you, Mark. Go ahead and let's play that.
So this was taken, obviously, before the murder.
Yes.
And how long before was this? 2017.
Yes.
So this is from 2017, and the murder happened in 2020. 2020. Yeah.
Okay, so this is where mothers of schizophrenics have to be careful. They'll go well beyond duty trying to help their sibling, but at a certain point they need to bow out for their own well-being because they're going to get hurt. Now, this is after Donovan's been completely taken over by these things. So you will see him in that state, in a state of rage, and that's what they try to do. They will tear apart the entire family. They hate kids. They hate mothers. They hate the family. They hate everything. Yeah. They hate everybody.
When he got like this, he was terrifying to be around. You did not know what he was going to do from one minute to the next.
No.
It was very, very scary.
Yes, I can kind of understand that perfectly.
Yeah.
From my own experience. Should we play the video now?
Yeah, go for it.
Go for it.
I need you for 2 minutes. I want you to come here because I'm gonna testify to you what just happened in the house, and I don't want Donovan here tonight. He can't stay here. Okay? I just asked him if he had dinner because I needed to put the dinner away.
Don't fucking play it off, you fucking abusive fucking female. Shut the fuck up. Stop. Shut the fuck up with your fucking bullshit ass fucking lying stupid shit.
What am I lying about?
Because you're a Fucking
Donovan,
piece of shit.
one
You
at
come
a
into my
time.
fucking house, into the
No,
room, and you
one
act
at a
like an
time.
asshole.
One at a time. One at a time.
Asshole.
Stop. Get in there.
Asshole.
Go. Let me hear it.
So-
I fucking walked away from you. You want to come out here and aggress us some more? Fuck
Stop.
you. Go fuck yourself.
Stop.
Fucking retarded
Stop.
shit.
Stop.
Okay, so I went and I asked him as I was getting up from my desk.
Stop. Stop and let her speak. You get your chance after this.
I got up from my desk and asked him if he had dinner, and he said no. And I was talking to him, and I said, do I not deserve a response? And he put his chest out, and he just kept walking towards me. Then he turns around at the stove, and he says to me, what's for dinner? And I said, you mean I've got to answer you, but you don't have to answer me?
You fucking stupid person.
Stop.
I said, I have to answer you, but you don't have to answer
Buy a
me?
fucking bus ticket for me to get the fuck out of here. Fuck yourself. Go fuck yourself. Fucking dumb bitch. Fucking record me some more. Stupid motherfucker.
Okay. He's not staying here tonight. I don't care where he stays. I've got the front door locked.
Nail me the fuck away then. Nail me the fuck away then. Nail me the fuck away then. Pay for it.
Both of
Pay
you
for it.
stop.
You fucking record me. Get the fuck out of here. Shit.
Okay.
Stop.
No, it's okay. One more time, and I'm calling the police.
Go
I'm
fuck-
gonna.
Get this
I'm
on
gonna.
video. Show this to my fucking grandkids. Go fuck yourself, Janine. You fucking fuck. You're a fucking evil bitch.
So there you go. If I can't, he can't stay here tonight, and I will not. I will not put up with this tomorrow.
Both of you stop.
You're not welcome in this house.
Welcome to my fucking life.
Okay.
Real fucking mature.
That's what happens when they're totally taken over. You know, mothers need to head for the hills. They can't tolerate this. They're going to get hurt. Janine did the right thing throwing him out. You know, you have to realize when you lost the battle.
Yeah, and Donovan, I hadn't seen Donovan have that kind of I had heard him on the phone, but actually physically being present in the same room with him, it had been over. That was 2017, the year I got pneumonia, and he had been in and out of prison since then. And what the irony of this is that he hadn't been in my presence either for 15 years, and I hadn't been around him to see a psychotic episode physically with him.
So he got worse in prison.
Yeah,
worse.
it was, his violence got extremely worse. It was really scary that night. It really was one of the scariest times.
Yeah, and unfortunately, our prisons have turned into the new state hospitals. They've closed all the state hospitals. Now they throw them in prison in these violent situations. They don't provide antipsychotic drugs unless they absolutely have to. So they're abused for years. They come out of there just raving mad, and then they're released upon society.
Yeah.
Prisons
Well, I think
don't
this is a
work.
big problem as well, Jerry. What I can say about it is that you can't help people unless they want to help themselves. And if you
Yes.
want to try and get them help, you can't get them into the system until they've committed a crime or until they've been sectioned.
Yep.
And that is a big problem
Yes, it
for
is.
people who are victims of the abuse of people who have been taken over like this.
Absolutely.
Or they just drug them senseless, and they have to put up with the horrible side effects of those drugs. And almost all of them eventually go off of those drugs because they can't stand them. And then the psychotic symptoms come back. They're not curing anything. They don't know the cause of paranoid schizophrenia. It's one of the biggest, it's one of the top 10 health problems in the world. They don't know what causes it. They don't know what to do about it, but they're certainly going to they're blaming the brain. And no thought has ever been found in the brain. People who've died and come back have reported their thinking is sharper, clearer, and quicker than it was when they had a body. So thoughts do not reside in the brain. The brain is like a radio receiver. It receives the thoughts, but if you open up a radio and you look for the person who's talking, you're not going to find it in there. Psychiatry just doesn't get it. They keep barking up the wrong tree over and over and over again.
Well, that's because it was based on flawed premise in the first place, and it's basically a way of getting people into the system. You can actually see why the system deals with people like this in the way it does, because they are problematic, and the system cannot discriminate or discern what's going on with people. So they have a blanket term which they use, which doesn't fit it. And really what happens is it just fills the prisons up with these people. And I've worked in, actually done some shows in Broadmoor, which is an NHS hospital, but that's for the criminally insane. And those people are just shuffling around, and they're basically bullied by these security guards. And that's how they live. They're in fear of these guards. And you look at these people and you think, well, what have they actually done? Because some of these people, you think, well, you don't even know or have any idea how they could have got in there. We're not talking about really violent people, but that's kind of a side issue. We need to keep on point tonight because we're going to try and keep this under an hour. So Janine, I think you should carry on with what you wanted to say. And after that video, things presumably really started to go downhill even further.
Yeah. So what ended up happening, the very next day, like midnight that night, I called Greyhound and I got a bus ticket. I said, "You're not staying here." And by then he had calmed down, but he was burning a fever. He was pallor. He was not doing well. His energy level was, because here's the deal. I refused to let him in the house. My roommate came in. She went to bed. The doors were locked. And I threw a blanket. I know this sounds terrible, but it's the truth. I gave him a blanket and I said, "Go out there, find a place to sleep outside. You're not coming in this house. I will not allow you in this house." So many hours had passed. Okay. And then I called and got a bus ticket, and I thought it was midnight the next day, but it ended up being midnight that night. And he came in the house and I told him, I said, "You're going to pack your stuff and I'm taking you to the bus station." And so I drove him to the bus station at his bus was leaving at like a little bit after midnight. And so I put him on a bus and sent him back to Denver. And there it was, he barely said a word to me, on the drive to the Tucson bus station that night. And trust me, I give you my word, I was petrified. I was shaking. I was a wreck. I had been crying. I was hurt. I was crushed. I can't even begin to tell you the level of emotion. Because what happens is you go into a flight or fright when your kids get violent like that, and they're like, "Okay, I'm going to demonstrate." It feels like this. They're going to come at you like this, monster. And the flood of emotions going through me, and then having to physically drive him and be in the same vehicle with him after this episode. But it wasn't like it ever happened. I give you my word. By the time he got everything packed and reality set into him, boom, he went down. He's got pallor. He started burning a fever. He started sweating. He packed his bags. Packed a duffel bag, and I drove him, to the bus station, and off he went. And I never saw him again. I still haven't seen him. I never saw him again. I've talked to him on the phone hundreds of times. But and then again, moving forward, I told him, my word to him was, if you go back to your girlfriend, I'm done. I'm not doing this with you anymore. I can't worry about you. I love you, but that's going to be the end of it for me. And so then when he got back to Denver, and he had no longer been off of the bus, and that was in November. By December, he was back in jail. and he ended up being in jail for like a year and a half or so. And then he got out.
What was that for, Janine?
Domestic violence with her. He went to jail, and that was his 4th time. So then in October of 2019, they got into it again, and they nearly killed each other. She tried to stab him. He tried to choke her. The police came, and then he got put back in jail in 2019. And then he got out in February, latter part of January, early February of 2020. And he got 2 weeks worth of meds, and he had to go to a homeless shelter. And then she had an apartment, and she coerced him into moving in with her. And he lied to me and told me he had a girlfriend by the name of he met this girl by the name of Denise, but it wasn't. And in that particular time, there was a lot of things going on, and, and I had a gut feeling he had went back to her. And then, so that was February of 2020. March is when COVID got announced. April is when we had the lockdown. And April 24th was his birthday. April 27th is when he called me up and told me he had stabbed her 15 times. And so this next video that I have that I've had you pull up is how I dealt with what happened afterwards. And I'd be honored if you'd play that, and then we can read another poem if you like.
Sure. Let's do that now.
Okay.
Right. Okay. So that was how you basically dealt with it. And the shock at first is and must be enormous. So I've been through something along the lines of what you went through, but obviously with not such a terrible outcome. But I think that to be able to kind of talk about this and get it out there is the most important thing, and that's what we're trying to do here, because we're talking about something that is not what people think it is. And I think that's the main issue here, in that identifying it, you are able to hopefully see that whatever did this was not the actual person. It was something that got into the person. Do you just want to expand on that a bit, Jerry, before we bring Janine back in?
Yeah, it's not what the psychiatric mafia is telling you. It's got nothing to do with your brain. They have found nothing wrong with the brain. They've never found a thought in the brain, and these voices come across as thoughts. And you have to have a thought before any conscious behavior is implemented. But they blow that totally off. They go, oh, well, we'll just drug the brain and knock these guys out and make them, with guys like Donovan, you have to do that. There is no other choice. But for the vast majority of people who hear voices, there's ways to get rid of them. I mean, we've gotten rid of them in sessions with many. It takes work, and they have to do the work. You know, but drugs have never helped. As soon as they stop taking the drugs, the voices come back, and they come back worse in most cases. Janine, you want to tell them about your group for mothers of schizophrenics? A lot of times my clients, people call me and say, I want a consult. And then I find out they're a mother of a schizophrenic, and they're calling for their son or daughter who doesn't want the help.
Yes.
So what was badly needed was a group for mothers of schizophrenics who could talk to one another.
Yes.
And when I ran into Janine, I went, she's the one. She's the one. So, it's miserable when you have a son or daughter that's eaten up by voices and they don't want any help and you can't reach them. So Janine started a group. You want to tell them about that group?
Yeah, and I do realize that this story about Donovan is on a complete violent spectrum of most schizophrenics, and I'm coming into that with that knowledge. But I also know that this journey that I'm on to work with other mothers and other family members with schizophrenia is hugely important, because one of the things that happened to me when my youngest son called me on the phone and said he had just heard it on the news, like when he was arrested here in Arizona on July 8th, he had, June 8th. He was arrested on June 8th, soon after he came here to kill me, which was on June 5th. One of the things that he said, he said, what happened? And I said, he had a schizophrenic episode. He was on meth, and he was very quiet on the phone. And he said, what do you mean, Mom? And my younger son is 32 at the time. And he said, what do you mean, Mom? And he said, Donovan's got schizophrenia. You're talking to somebody right here. I swept it under the rug for years. My two younger sons did not know that Donovan was a schizophrenic. And that's when I knew I have to make a change. I can't do this anymore, because every parent who has a child, most every parent, I should say, and most of the women I talk to right now and the men that have family members have swept it under the rug, because that's what you do. There's no explanation for it. And you know why we do that? Because we don't want people to think we're freaking nuts. And because we're not. We're dealing with a family member who has it. And I'm telling you right now, that's not the case. It's not genetic. It is something that happens. We don't understand it. We have to talk about it. We have to bring this out in the open. We have to make people aware that schizophrenia is not a disease. And I love working with the parents. And I have a Facebook group. It's called Moms and Family Members with Schizophrenia. And it is linked to Jerry Marzinsky's schizophrenic group. It's on Facebook, Moms and Family Members with Schizophrenic. Just go look it up and tell me that you heard this on Mark with Windows on the World. And there's a bunch of questions you're going to have to answer. You let them know you heard it on Mark with Windows on the World. If you're a family member, a mom or a parent that has a family member with schizophrenia, I don't care where you are in the world, come join us. We have a lot of good conversation in there. We need the support group. I'm
Yeah,
here.
there's not many people understand what parents are going through, especially mothers.
Yeah.
You know,
It's very hard, and you have to be strong. And I'm here to hopefully be that light for you.
Well, that's great that you've started the support group up, Janine, and I think that's going to be really helpful for people, because one of the problems I had in the situation I was in, that I didn't have any help from anybody, and nobody, not even the close family members of this person, would admit there was anything really wrong. They
Yeah.
just said, well, she just gets angry sometimes. I said, no, it's not
Yeah.
that at all. It's nothing like that. And I think they knew that. And I wasn't warned. Nobody told me. They just thought, oh, great, she's off our back.
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
And-
since psychiatry has put a label to this as, you know, schizophrenia or psychosis, it's got a taint to it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's got a what do you call it?
There's a myth
Well, it's a
around
schism,
it.
basically. I mean, it's
Yeah.
a schism within a cult,
Yes.
because basically psychiatry is just a cult like any other cult.
Yes.
And the cult members adhere strictly to the materialistic, atheistic nonsense that they've been told. And none of them can hold an argument together talking about what we're talking about. It's just outside their experience. Therefore, it doesn't exist. How come then that the Catholic Church have been talking about it for since the inception of that and before? And this has been known for thousands of years. Ancient Demons of Babylon is one of the books I've been reading over the past year. So that's 6,000 years ago. And it goes back a lot further than that. It goes back to since people have walked the earth. And
Well,
some
they do
people think
worse than they do worse than that. They have proclaimed it without any research whatsoever that these voices are hallucinations. Now, who in their right mind, beside myself, is going to investigate hallucinations? You know, if you believe they're a hallucination, you're not going to spend any time or energy looking into it. You know, but there were so many things that didn't make sense when I went to work in the state hospital for the first time that were just contradictions to that. You know, one of which is they're saying it was a chemical imbalance, but they never gave any lab tests ever to see what that balance was or what was out of balance. They don't even know what the balance of the brain should be. Yet they come out there and proclaim it's a hallucination due to a chemical imbalance. And even though it's been disproven solidly, they're still making that claim. It's incredible.
One of the things I do want to say about that, Jerry, and I say this to you, Mark, too, when I learned about you, when Jerry shared me, you know, about what was going on with you, and I know we're running short on time, I'll be very quick about this. There are some new nonprofits that are perking up, and I'm doing more research on that. I won't post them until I know for sure where they stand as far as pharmaceuticals go. But what I do want to say is that Jerry and Mark, both of you, all the work that you've been doing and over the years on schizophrenia, somebody's listening to you. They may not come right out and say, I've been listening to Jerry Marzinsky and Mark's videos all the time, but I can guarantee you with what I'm reading and with what Sherry Sweeney and I have been, you know, looking at these websites together, is that there are a lot of truths that are starting to come out, and a lot of more compassion towards schizophrenic people, and understanding that they're human beings. They're not animals, and they have been so treated like animals in the past. And please don't misunderstand me that I'm saying that my son was treated like an animal. My son was an animal. My son was possessed, still is, and as far as I'm concerned, still is possessed demonically. I believe that 100%. Those voices are very real. There is nothing about, you saw the video, everybody, in the very beginning, of what Donovan looked like when he had a schizophrenic episode. That, my friends, is not a hallucination. I give you my word. That is very real. That is the demon, the entity that is coming out. He has no control over what that demon or entity does. And when he allows that entity and that demon to take over, that is when the danger is. And you have, as a parent, you must be afraid. You must protect yourself. You must do all of the right things to get yourself out of that situation, because you will get hurt if you haven't been hurt already. That is just the way it is. Those are not hallucinations. Jerry is 100% spot on that. No matter what he say, no matter what you're told, these are not hallucinations. You're not dealing with hallucinations.
I think once people actually experience this, then you realize what it is. Some people just don't get it because they've never experienced it. That's what it is. It's outside their experience. Therefore, they think, oh, it could be a diet disorder. It could be this. No, it's nothing like that.
Absolutely.
We're talking about an intensity of rage and strength, which is almost supernatural. And this is something that gets into a person. It's not the original entity that's causing it. Something gets into that person. Something attaches itself either through the abuse, through them opening up through drugs, or basically through invitation. And these things get in and they take over. And I've seen it close up. And I was trying to get help for years, and nobody would do anything about it. And I thought, God, I hope this person gets into trouble. I hope the police get involved. Then something can be done. It just got worse and worse and worse. As soon as the police involved, it gets much worse.
Yes, that is so true.
Yeah, so I hope that's been helpful for people tonight. We're trying to keep this quite short, so I want this to get on Odyssey straight away. But I think that was a good bit of exposition, and we'll be coming back with more of these. Obviously, we've done about 10 with Jerry now, and they're all in an article on wondersontheworld.net on the homepage called Demons Are Real. The actual link's on the homepage. Do please subscribe to us on Odyssey, and also Spreaker, which is where our Sunday shows go out at 9:30 p.m. every Sunday. That's UK time. We also have a Discord channel if you want to engage with like-minded people and get off social media and get into somewhere where you can actually find people who are maybe like-minded and have a brain cell or two left. So that's really it for tonight. Is there anything, Jerry, you want to say in summing up?
Well, your thoughts are not your own. You know, nobody's ever found a thought in anybody's brain. You know, these drugs for people like Donovan are the only answer. But for the vast majority of schizophrenics, they're fighting a battle for their sanity with these voices that psychiatry are telling them are hallucinations, and take these drugs. And they, if they believe they're hallucinations, they're going to get worse.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
And psychiatrists have never experienced them. So here they are talking to these people about an experience that they've never had and can't relate to, and saying the only way to deal with it is to drug your brain. So they turn them into zombies. It doesn't cure anything. It just, the only reason those drugs work is because they're major tranquilizers. They calm them down.
Exactly.
These things
there's
feed
another side of
off
that, Jerry.
negative
If the
emotional
person
energy.
doesn't want to be helped, it's like you told me. If the person doesn't want to be helped, there's nothing you can do. And I tried and tried and tried. It got worse and worse and worse, more and more dangerous, more and more problems, and just more and more kind of trauma inflicted all around and problems. And that is the other side of it, that you have to know when to quit. You have to know when to quit, because if somebody is overtaken by this, then there is nothing you can do unless they want to get rid of it. And they have to be consciously aware 24 hours a day of what's coming into their head, and start developing that open awareness where you can actually see things coming in. And that is what it's all about. It's all about awareness. It's all about things that are getting in through cracks in awareness, really. That's my view of it. And somebody's actually put in, a few people wanted to ask a few questions, but what I think we should do, if it's okay with you, Jerry, is maybe we could do a Q&A session.
Yeah.
Would you like to do that?
Sure.
Well, I'm game for that. I would like to add something. I'd like to add something real quick here, because I think it's really important. Because by the time Donovan got down here to Tucson, and from the time that the murder was committed, we estimated it was about, the 23rd, 24th of April, around his birthday. He had in his possession her body, parts of her body, 43 days. And of those days, the investigators said that he was high on meth for 15 days straight.
Yeah, it's horrific stuff. I mean, it's going into the very darkest places where human beings can go, all this stuff. So I think that people who look into this are kind of needing to do it. I think that most people avoid this. They do not want to know about it. And there's a difference between kind of a morbid fascination with it and actually trying to solve the problem. And that's what we're trying to do here. We're trying to solve a problem that is very, very serious. And having been in this situation, I'm very lucky that I met Jerry, because he's helped me see a lot of this for what it is, but also it turns out that it is exactly what I thought it was in the first place. I know.
Right?
Yeah. Well, let's leave it on a high note. Yeah. Yeah. Well, we're trying to be cheerful about it, everybody, and I hope it's been helpful for everyone out there. I'm going to keep this to under an hour, and there's going to be some more stuff uploaded. Do go to the website. Do check out the links. Do join us every Sunday, 9:30 p.m. UK time. Subscribe to us on Odyssey because we don't get any traction on YouTube. So, yes, I know that it needs to be longer, Jeff, but we're trying to keep these shorter. We're going to actually start doing maybe some Q&A sessions. That would be great. And I'll get on to Jerry about that and Janine. And hopefully we'll see you all again, maybe in a week or two on this subject. So thanks a lot, everybody, for tuning in.
Thank you for being here, everyone.
Thanks, Janine.
Thank you,
Thanks, Jerry.
Thank you, Mark.